Good morning and a very warm welcome indeed to today's iOB business webinar. My name's Ben and I'm the resident business coach here at iOB Business. It's an absolute pleasure to be presenting this webinar to you. Okay, so if you have any questions at all throughout today's webinar, please don't hesitate to ask. It's always a pleasure to answer them and we'll get them answered for you at the end of today's webinar during the Q&A segment. Now, whilst we are waiting for the final few people to join, a very warm welcome to those of you that are on with us just now. Okay, so one crucial thing that we're going to do throughout today's webinar session as well is we're going to make sure that we take time for a brief pause in between each of the three core topics that we're going to discuss today to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask the questions and indeed take a moment to jot down any notes that they may wish to take as well. Okay, so whilst we are approaching the 10 o'clock mark, let's go ahead and get the video camera switched off there. So you should still be able to hear my voice, but you should no longer be able to see my face. And in just a moment's time, you should be able to see the presentation that we have for you up on the screen there as well. Okay, so as we are at the 10 o'clock mark, just approaching, we will get started with today's session. Now, if I could please just ask a quick favor before we get kicked off for today, just let me know that you can hear my voice okay, and that you can see the presentation up on screen there okay as well. That would be fantastic. Excellent. Looks like we are good to go. Okay, thank you ever so much. So today's topic of conversation, how to stop a startup from flatlining. Okay. Now, first things first, my name is Ben. I'm a business coach and I specialize in working with small businesses, just like many of you on here, to help them achieve stability and growth. Okay, it's my passion. It's what I love to do. And it's an absolute pleasure to be on here with you doing it this morning. So discussion points. Number one, keep a cap on the over-eagerness. Okay, we're going to talk about in good detail what this means and how you can make sure that you achieve it. Number two, we're going to talk about making smart choices. Okay, because one of the really, really big things, especially in startup business, is knowing how to make the smart choices. Okay, because it's all very well and good me saying to you, oh, well, make a smart choice, but you need to know how to make those smart choices as well. And finally, we're going to talk about hiring the right team to have around you. So three very, very important factors, all of which we're going to talk about today in good detail. Okay, getting kicked off with keeping a cap on the over-eagerness. So what we are going to discuss over this webinar is how you can avoid crucial mistakes that can cause startups to collapse before they've even had a chance. Okay, so the really, really big thing I want to get talking about in this webinar is startup business. Now, the reason for that is because many of us may already have a business, or many of us may just be getting into business. And this is why it's absolutely crucial that we understand how startups operate and how we can make the absolute most from them as we're going throughout our business journey. Okay. And one of the biggest things that we're going to look to avoid here is the kind of collapse before you've even had a chance to begin. And there's many mistakes that we can avoid that could cause this. And for a lot of us, this might be the first time in business. So there's a lot to learn over the years of business. There's a lot of things that a lot of us are still learning, including myself, including everyone in business. Okay. Now, here's an absolutely crucial thing to point out. Okay. Business is an ever evolving journey. It's something that you will always be learning with. And we never want to put ourselves in a position where we say, okay, I've learned everything I have to learn. That's it for me. I'm finished. Okay. Because we're always, always, always learning. But what we can do is take advice from experience to avoid crucial mistakes that could collapse a business early on. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay. So one of big one of these factors is over-eagerness. Okay. Over-eagerness is one of the biggest culprits in early startup failure. Okay. And it's something that we need to avoid. Now, if you take a moment, whether you're currently running your own startup, whether you've had a startup before in the past and potentially it hasn't worked out, whether you've had a startup before in the past and it has worked out, or whether you're currently running a successful business, think about what I might mean by this over-eagerness. Okay. Now, here's something that many of us go through when we're first getting into business. Okay. It's extremely exciting. There's so many things going on. We want to dive in head first. But what we end up doing almost inadvertently is we try and jump hurdles before we've actually laid the proper foundations for a strong business. Now, those of us that have been in business for a while will know this feeling because we'll look back on when we first started the business and we'll think, yeah, I do remember a couple of mistakes that I made because I was over eager. But now, what would I do differently if I was to go back? Okay, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. And we don't want to focus on the past, but we want to acknowledge the mistakes that we've made that we wouldn't make again in business if we had the chance to do it over again. Okay, now what is over-eagerness? Okay, for those of us that haven't been through this yet, or we're in the very, very early startup stage, let's have a look at what this could mean for us. Okay, and for those of us that have been in business for a while, some of this may become or may feel familiar to you as well. Okay, and for even those of us that are just starting, let me know in the chat box if any of this kind of resonates or rings a bell for you. Okay. First thing, making illogical moves such as launching a digital agency without first establishing a target market. Okay. Now, how many of us have done this in business before where we've thought, right, brilliant, we've got the most fantastic business and we've created a service or product that we feel is amazing, but we've actually not necessarily forgotten, but potentially overlooked the target market. Who is this product or service going to sell to? And why is it going to sell to them? Okay, because there's many, many times where I've been working with a business and they've said to me, Ben, I've got the most amazing product, or I've got the most amazing service. And I asked them a very simple question. Who's going to buy it? Okay. Now, this is such a big mistake because a lot of us get very, very involved in what we believe to be an amazing product or service, which is the most fantastic and amazing thing because the passion is incredible. However, what we can never forget is how applicable things are to our target audience or target market. Okay. And the biggest reason for that is we need to design something that they need or that they want that they are going to buy. Okay. Because it's all very well and good creating something that we love, but we need to make sure we're also creating something that they love. Okay. And that's how we're going to make sure that we build something correct for our market. Okay, so how do we avoid doing this? Don't rush anything. Okay, take your time when getting started because it will help you long term. Take your time to establish your target market. Take time to establish what products and what services apply to them the most and how you can create something that is going to continually provide for them for years and years and years to come, especially when you're in a service-based business. Okay, because there are lots and lots of things that apply to being a successful service-based business, such as building rapport long term, taking care of your clients, great customer service, regular meetings, regular reports, but also making sure that the service being delivered is applicable and will always be applicable. And in order for that to happen, we have to first understand our target market. And second, we have to make sure that we remain agile and we adapt as our target market needs us to adapt. Okay, because ultimately our business is funded by those that choose to invest in our services, and they're only going to do that if they feel like it's worthwhile, it's good value for money, it's valuable for them. Okay, so that brings us to the end of topic number one. Now, as promised, we're going to take a brief pause. This will give us a chance to ask away with any questions. It'll also give us a chance to jot down any notes from the slide because we're going to leave the slide up on screen there for you as well. So do let me know what questions you have. Thank you for interacting with me in the chat box so far. That always makes the webinar more fantastic. I'm going to take a brief pause and I'll see you again in just a moment for topic number two, which again, we will discuss in excellent detail. And I'll see you again in just a moment. Perfect. So let's move ourselves on to topic number two, make smart choices. Okay, so as I said at the beginning of this webinar, not only do we need to know that we have to make smart choices, we also need to know how to make smart choices. And that's a big portion of what we're going to be talking about on today's webinar session. Okay, because it's all very well and good me asking you to make smart choices, but I have to also let you know how these smart choices can be made in order for you to do it effectively, okay? Which is ultimately one of the main goals of this webinar, to make sure that you come away loaded with information that you can take straight into your business or your potential future startup business. Okay, so here's a scenario question, and this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to take a little bit of time doing. Okay, I'm going to give you a scenario question. I'm going to talk you through the question. I'm going to explain it to you, and I'm going to give you possible answers. Okay, and I want you to work through this webinar with me here. Answer the questions for yourself or pop it in the chat box. Let me know what you would do. Okay, and I'll give you some time to go through the question, figure it out a little bit, and make sure that you've had time to analyze the answer. So here's a scenario question, and I'll explain it to you as well. Your new business, okay, your startup business, has an advertising budget of £500, okay? Now, this is an advertising budget, so this is a budget out with the rest of your budget, and it's to last for 3 months, okay? Now, what this means is you've allocated yourself a quarterly advertising budget of £500, okay? It's £2,000 a year. Now, over the next 3 months, we've got £500. Now, it's up to us how we spend it, okay? We don't necessarily have to stretch it over the next 3 months, okay? The only thing that we need to know is that for this specific quarter, for this specific 3 months, we have £500 worth of advertising budget. Now, here are the possible answers for you, okay? So, do you A, spend all £500 in a 1-week powerful paid advertising campaign? Okay, you take your £500, you think of the best possible campaign that you could launch, you send it into outer space. It's so good, it's absolutely fantastic, it's a groundbreaking campaign. All £500 goes into this 1-week powerful, punchy advertising campaign, and you look to see what it can bring you. Okay, so do you do this? Answer A. Okay, let me know in the chat box what you think, or if you want to, hold off for answer B. Do you diversify the budget? Do you spread it out, okay, across paid ads, organic marketing, and networking fees? Okay, now do with this question, do with this answer as you will, okay? But to fully explain B, do we take the £500? Do we split it up into chunks? Do we put some of it into paid advertising? Do we use some of it for organic marketing, say, okay? Because organic marketing generally could mean free, but it could also mean extremely low cost, okay? And networking fees, all right? Now, entry to networking events, etc. What would you do? Okay, let me know in the chat box. I'll give you a moment. Thank you for the answers so far. Okay, interesting. So I'm not going to say out loud what the answers were from the chat box, okay? But what I will say, and this is interesting because I'm seeing a couple of explanations around each answer, okay? What I will say is I'm certainly leaning towards B, okay? Diversify the budget across paid ads, organic marketing, and networking fees. And I'll tell you why. Because if we take the entire budget, and bearing in mind, the crucial part here is that we are a brand new business, okay? We are an early startup, okay? Now, the reason that I'm going for option B as opposed to option A is because with option A, I've taken everything I have, and instead of making it last the 3 months, now, whilst we didn't specify in B that we were going to stretch it across 3 months, which possibly could have been included, what I can clarify in A is that I've taken the entire budget and I have spent it all in one single week. Okay. Now, what this doesn't allow for is time for me to learn. I also can't guarantee that because the whole thing went into one campaign, that it's actually going to be effective. So those are two major things that I've missed there. Whereas if I go for B, I've taken some of the budget into paid ads so I can see if paid ads works for me. I've taken more of it into materials maybe so that I can market a bit more organically. I spent some of it on networking fees so that I can build my network as well. Now, what I can do from this is I can take a lot more knowledge and I can say, right, okay, well, I've taken £50 and I spent that on networking fees. How many new contacts did that get me? I've taken 300 and I put that in paid ads. What did that do for me? And I can answer a lot more questions. I can get a lot more research. I can get a lot more information. Now, information and learning is crucial in business, okay? Now, what may seem obvious before you launch a business can become confusing when you're in the driving seat. Okay. Many of us find it easy. Okay. Now, even if we haven't consciously thought about this, here's a scenario I'd love to give you. Okay. Many of us find it easier from the outside to look at a business and say, hey, I would do this. Okay. Let's say that you went through the drive-through for your coffee this morning and you think, well, I would actually have one person working the till and another person making the coffee and another person making the cold drinks. Okay. It's very easy for you to say from the outside that this is what you would do. Okay. And the reason for that is because you can essentially pick the element of the business that you would like to change without having to worry about the operational load of any other parts of the business. You're not thinking about shifts that those staff are on, or how long they've been working, or how complex one station is over another, or how somebody's skill set differently affects a different station. Okay. So what may seem obvious before you launch a business can become confusing when you're in the driving seat. Okay. So it's not to say that your logic isn't correct, but what it is to say is that we have to sometimes try and step outside of our own business, because once we're in the business, what I just spoke about there can become a bit overwhelming, okay? Because we're now in the midst of the business and everything seems a little bit more difficult, okay? And we're not actually sure if the decision we're going to make is the right decision. So sometimes it really helps to step back outside the business and imagine you're looking at from the outside in again. What would you do? What makes logical sense? Okay, because often you are correct, but we can allow ourselves to become confused because that exact dynamic of not having to take the operational load that I was just talking about when we're looking from the outside in is the very thing that can become confusing. So we have to make sure we actually remember to step outside of that. Okay, so every decision you make must be logically reviewed before you give an answer. Okay, if you're going to make a decision, review it with a logical mind, okay? If we're going to switch the station, so to speak, and make things more efficient, just double check that this is going to likely have the outcome that you would like for it to have. Okay, so once again, as we did before, we'll take another brief pause for any more questions and indeed any more notes. And I'll rejoin you again in just a moment for the third and final topic of today's webinar presentation. Okay, perfect. So let's move ourselves on to topic number 3, where we're going to talk about hiring the right team. Okay, now here's something that's important to clarify. Your team isn't just in-house employees. Okay, when many of us think about building a team around our business, we often think, okay, well, we're going to have to fully hire them and bring them into the office, so to speak. Okay, and what I want us to remember is that this isn't strictly true. Okay. Now, one of the keys to business that I've developed over my years and came to realize, as many of us have, and this isn't new discovery by me, okay? This is something that has been in business for a very, very, very long time, that every good business leader understands, is that you will move so much more efficiently, so much more productively if you do it with a team, okay? But that team isn't always just in-house employees, okay? That team can be a wonderful, vast amount of people with all kinds of different knowledge and skill sets that you can lean on, that you can contribute to, okay? That you can bounce off of when you've got new ideas, new concepts. And we want to always be open to learning more, okay? So what we really need to begin thinking about here with a team is that our team can be freelance experts. It can be somebody we met at a networking event. It can be a trusted business mentor. It can be a good friend that's doing something else amazing in life that really has a lot of value to give you. Okay. It's very much about understanding that building a team isn't just in-house employees. I'd like you to take a moment, think about people in your life that give you immense amount of value. Who are those people? Because they are your team. Okay. Just because maybe you are a solopreneur and you're doing this business on your own, so to speak, but how often would you feel that input could be valuable from a family member, from a friend, from a colleague, from an ex-colleague, from a mentor, from a freelancer that you met 3 years ago? Okay, there are always people that can add and contribute to the success of your business and the success of you, and as much as you would like to give back to them as well. So another place that you can make a smart decision is beginning with a low-cost outsourcing option as opposed to hiring in-house straight away. Okay, so if you would like your physical team to grow for the business in terms of people that quite literally work in the business, an option for you could be low-cost outsourcing, potentially with, say, a freelancer, as opposed to actually fully hiring someone in-house on, say, a permanent fixed salary. Okay, because this can be an expensive option early on in business. Whereas if we outsource, there's no, well, there can be, but there doesn't always have to be contracts. Often the rates of pay can be potentially a little bit more cost effective, and you're not making the same size of financial commitment when you choose to outsource to a freelancer as you would be hiring in-house. Hiring in-house is a very big permanent decision if it's done the right way. Okay, so take time to find experts with the correct skill set to fill a role that you actually need. Okay, so what we need to always be doing is analyzing gaps in our business, seeing where value can be brought in, and making sure that we clarify what skill set is needed within the business so that we can make sure that we find the right person to come in and fill this role for us. Okay? Because many of us, again, a big mistake in business, and potentially this could even affect, or contribute to the over-eagerness conversation where we hire too quickly and we hire for the wrong position or something that we kind of need but didn't need as much as we need something else. So always take time to think. For example, maybe the business needs to be marketed a little better, but what you really need is somebody who is good with sales to sell more of your services. Okay, because maybe you don't find it as easy naturally to sell things. Okay, so the right team will carry your business forward. The wrong team could sink your ship. It's very, very important to remember this. Okay, and it also affects bigger points as well, like our core values, the core values of our business, to the core values of our potential future team align with our business? Do they know what the goals of the business are, and are they willing to help us get there? Okay, now, nobody will ever care about your business as much as you do, and we can't expect them to, because that wouldn't be fair, because it isn't theirs. But what we can expect of them is to understand the goals of the business and be willing to help the business get there. Okay, so the right team will carry your business forward. The wrong team could sink your ship. Now, that brings us to the end of topic number 3, where we'll once again take a brief pause. What I'm going to do is prepare the questions that I've had from you lovely people today, and we will do a recap, then we will do the Q&A for today's session. So I'll see you again in just a moment. Okay, so let's do a recap for today's session. Number 1, don't be over-eager. Take your time in making the right decisions. Number 2, make the smart choices. We've ran over a good scenario question that allows us the logic to help begin making these smart choices. And finally, surround yourself with the right team, and remember that that team isn't always necessarily in-house employees. Okay, so as always, a massive thank you for taking the time to attend today's session. If you'd like to talk to a member of our team, you're more than welcome to head over to iob-business.com/talk, and on there you can book a call at a time that suits you. So if you follow this link, you'll see a calendar just like this one where you can go ahead and book a session. And let's grab the questions that we have. How do I know someone would be a good fit for the role? Okay, so this is the first question, and it's a fantastic one. Okay, so what you can do here is define the role right down to the T. Okay, additionally, you can ask yourself if the person you're interviewing agrees with the core values of your organization, which is going to be a very, very important point. Okay, ask the person what their core values are even. Okay, because if they don't have core values as an individual, and even if they haven't got them sort of assigned, hopefully they'll be able to tell you what some of their core values or core beliefs are and how that can fit in with your organization. It's a very, very good practice to go down. Okay, so do this, and also make sure that whatever role you need, define it right down to the T to make absolutely certain that you know exactly what you're hiring for. Okay, because the person joining the organization is only really partially to blame if they're not doing as good of a job as we would have thought or we would have needed, because we may have also not clarified that role fully. And second question, I like to do everything myself to make sure it's done correctly. Fair enough. Okay. And your commitment there is excellent. But what happens when you want to grow? Okay. What happens when you need to do more than what you physically have the capacity for? Okay. Because I do understand that, you know, I like to do everything myself as well. But what I also understand is that sometimes other people can have a different perspective. And now it's not always necessarily better or worse, but it can add more to the project, to the task at hand, which is a very, very important perspective to take. So that's a great question. Thank you very much for asking. Hopefully that answer works for you. Do we have any more questions? No, wonderful. Okay, well, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us on today's webinar session. I look forward to seeing you on the next presentation. Take care and bye for now.